Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Excuse me. Before we begin, I'd just like to take a quick moment of silence for, actually, Mark, could you tell us about Mr. Riley and his relative's passing, if you could, for a moment?
Sure. Jim Riley, I worked with his dad, passed away, was 95 years old, long time in service to the state of Rhode Island, mental health, big advocate, involved in the board of directors, the Obituaries Fund, covered a couple of columns, Lakers tonight, and his funeral's tomorrow.
Mr. Riley has been part of the Kelly, Keller, Riley Simpson law firm in town for decades, and Mr. McSally is a of council member of that firm. So take a moment of silence for Mr. Riley's the passing of his father. Thank you very much. The first item tonight is the approval of the minutes. The first item is the June 2nd, 2014 executive session meeting minutes.
There was one modification that I think Glenna pointed out to me. I think I listed her as making a motion and seconding the adjournment. It should have been Susan as making the motion and Glenna seconding it. With that modification, I think they're okay.
Agree. Agree.
Someone like to make that motion?
I'll make that motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Someone like to make a motion to approve the July 7th, 2014 regular meeting minutes.
I'll move that motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And the July 21st, 2014 work session meeting minutes.
I'll move that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And the July 21st regular meeting minutes. Someone like to make that motion.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And the announcement tonight is the update on the major Rhode Island Department of Transportation fall projects. I believe Mr. Cesarin?
This is going to be a standard request on the agenda, correct, Pam? This is a standard request on the agenda for each month. You're going to do an update?
Yeah, we can, or more frequently if there are certain developments.
Yeah.
There are a couple of major DOT initiatives going on in Narragansett right now. The first one is that we all see on Sprague Bridge. That's part of a statewide contract that DOT is doing to do bridge support work. And the scope of work on that project includes repairs to the steel support girders, some deck and concrete wing wall repairs, and the new supports for the utility lines that are hung underneath the bridge. They're going to continue to maintain one-lane traffic throughout the duration of the project, and that work is expected to be completed by the end of this calendar year. The next bridge project that DOT has on the books in Narragansett is the long-awaited Great Island Bridge project. And it was kind of funny because I know, Susan, when you and I talked about this, I think I had mentioned that I attended a public hearing on the Great Island Bridge project in 1994 when I had hair and did not need reading glasses. And at that point, the project was imminent. So here we are 20 years later, and the project is going forward. DOT has awarded a contract for the Great Island Bridge project. They've finally gotten the funding hurdles cleared up with the Federal Highway, and the work will begin. There'll be a soft start this fall as they mobilize and do some utility work, but they actually won't shut down any part of the bridge until probably springtime. That is another project where DOT has promised to maintain one lane open at all times. So they will just demolish one lane of the bridge, reconstruct it, demolish the other lane, reconstruct it. By doing it that way and by doing most of the work it's a barge-based project, it will take over 2 years to complete the bridge. So it sounds like a lot of time. It is a lot of time. It's also a $9 million investment in Narragansett. So hard to believe that a bridge of that span could cost that kind of money. But the other project that DOT has going on that everyone sees when you drive through the Rotary is the salt storage barn. And again, that's a project that has been, quote unquote, on the books for probably 7, 8, 9 years now. I remember talking with Maury about it back in 2005, 2006. And that's part of DOT's initiative throughout the state to enclose all their salt operations. We're all required to do it as municipalities. You're no longer allowed to have open salt piles for concerns about erosion and runoff, and DOT is following their own lead here by constructing that. Now, the salt barn is on state-owned land, so we have no role in that. That project did not come before our planning or zoning board. It did not come before Tony and the building inspector's office. All the permits run through the state building commissioner's office on it, and that's why you never saw it as a body either. It's strictly a state project on state land, so they're exempt from all of the local issues.
So I want to say thanks for putting it on. I mean, people ask in the town what's happening on the bridge or what's happening with the salt bond. So I think it's a really important thing. So, because a lot of times we don't know because they're state projects. So anytime a project comes from the state into the town, if we can have an update, then the public can hear, oh, that's what's going on. Because I'm always running to the phone to call to find out, oh, what is that project? And I know some of them were 10 years ago, 20 years ago, so when you had here, but I think it's important for the community because they do ask members of the council, and so I appreciate the time.
The last one, very quickly, that did not take 10 or 20 years, the state, as of last Friday, has approved our request for the adopt-a-spot at Dillon Rotary. So it's now Steve's adopt-a-spot.
Good, great, thanks.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to the open forum. Please state your name and address upon approach to the podium. Mr. Miller.
John Miller, 99 Central Street. I saw an item in the Providence Journal on October 1st that you may have seen, may not have, but let me read it. It's very brief. It says the Department of Environmental Management has awarded $87,000 to the city of East Providence to help pay for the removal of 2 barges that sank in the Providence River years ago. Excuse me. The agency says the barges are an eyesore and pose a hazard to boaters navigating through the area. They're resting on the bottom of the river on Green Jacket Shoal or Boat Point. The grant was awarded under a state program that aims to deal with derelict and abandoned vessels. The state says the city will remove the barges with the help of Clean Bays, a nonprofit agency that specializes in removing debris from local waterways. It just seemed to me that we've got the most beautiful beach in the state by far, and that we've got a sunken barge that's been out there about 25 years, and maybe we could get some of this money. I don't know whether you've seen this. I've got copies here if anybody wants it.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Mr. Wojciechowski.
I can't help but continue to highlight what I call spending irresponsibility. Spending irresponsibility, and the result is we have to have our taxes raised every year. There is a town in Rhode Island that didn't raise taxes this year, so it can be done. So I perceive that if we always have to see an increase, that means you people are not spending wisely. Therefore, you're assuming that we're going to have more money to spend next year. Therefore, you put the plan into effect. How much can we get away to increase taxes without a lot of people coming here? And so I can't help us. Now we're at the program, of course, critical financial status. So now we have some agency calling us in on this critical financial status. So obviously, financially, we're doing something wrong if we're in some kind of critical status. And if we're in critical status, as I said many times, I'm going to say it again and again, how do we borrow money when you're in critical status? I can't go to a bank and borrow money if I'm in a critical status. What gives you the permission to go and borrow money on bonds if you're in critical status? It tells me that, to me, it's almost illegal that somebody would permit you to borrow money when you're in critical status, indicating you probably can't pay it back. Or, of course, you're going to expect that you're going to increase taxes high enough to do it. But critical status, to me, is obviously is the first thing. And I've asked many people, hey, at least let's not vote for the bonds to give you an idea. This is what happens when you get a critical status. You can't spend money. You can't borrow money. You've got to have a hiring freeze. I'll give you an example on rental issues. I think we have something like 2,800 rentals in town, maybe. 2,800 rentals for 30 days. That's 84,000 rental days we had in September. 84,000. Out of those 84,000 rental days, we had, what I understand, 8 orange stickers. We had 8 violations out of 84,000. Now, that justifies us to go out and hire a police officer. I thought I heard $74,000 a year, and probably over $2 million in benefits. So here we are spending millions of dollars to correct the problem, to try and stop 8 orange stickers. Try to listen to that. We have 8 violations out of 84,000 possibilities, and we're going to spend over a couple of $1 million. Something's wrong there. I want to stop that. I asked for a hiring freeze, and you start right there. I know you approved to have a policeman there. Doesn't belong there. It's not needed there. In fact, Tetzner went out there and he said he had a ride along, and the paper said he thought it looked pretty good. He blamed the college for it. They had something going on at the college. However, it's not necessary for us to spend $2 million plus in order to prevent 8 orange stickers. Does that sound right? I don't think so. So we got to look back on how we spend money, correct that action. I hope the future council people will understand that. We have to change our habits. They're wrong now. Something is wrong. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brady. He's here for the gas station.
Patrick Brady, 156 Boston Neck Road. We have a beautiful town, beautiful tourist town, and from Monahan's Dock to the town beach and the towers, it's one of our best attractions in this town, and it draws a lot of tourists. Unfortunately, on the south side at Monahan's Dock, we have a vending truck, the Roxy Lobster, I believe, that sits there all winter. I don't think it has been used at that location in 2 years. So that's our south anchor of this beautiful Ocean Road. On the north end, at the towers, we have the Blue Lobster, which has sat there for 2 summers and never been used to my knowledge. It's never been open for use at any time during the 2 summers. The last 2 winters, both those vending trucks have sat there all winter, not used. Before 2 years ago, at least the Blue Lobster I know I saw at the Shell station being stored during the winter. But for some reason, they think they can store it all winter at their location at the restaurant. I am asking the council and the town manager to request that both of those restaurants move those from those locations during the winter at least, in common respect to the people of Narragansett. I know John Miller wrote a letter in the paper a couple of months ago, a great article. I called him the next morning, congratulated on it. But I see the Blue Lobster still there, and it's not just the Blue Lobster. Both anchors on both ends, we have the same problem. I don't know why we ever allowed the stanchion light to go up at the towers for that Blue Lobster to begin with. A lot of people spend a lot of time volunteering their time to put in the casino courtyard, which views right over to the ocean. And right smack in the middle of that view is the Blue Lobster and the stanchion poles lighting for that parking lot. We need to do something about it. Those 2 restaurants need to do something about it for the people of Narragansett. They get a lot of money from us, and they should respect us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pam, could you check into that as the manager? Because I'm not sure if they were there because of the food truck program and then didn't get back on a list. I don't know. I've not seen if they were used either. Just inquire about it.
I will ask our zoning official.
Yes, ma'am. To come up to the. You have to use the microphone, please.
to mind those trucks. I think they're adorable, and I think they're quaint, and they bring back an old, I think they're quaint, I think they're adorable, and they give the idea that maybe people from out of town may be able to afford something other than trios. So I kind of think they're cute and quaint, and I don't know anything else about it but that. That's my opinion. It's a little bit of Americana. I have been asking...
Can you just state your
You
name?
need my name, Joyce. Doe, D-O-E, Joyce Doe. So that was my comment about the trucks, and that there are a lot of people that do come from out of state, out of town, that can't afford the Coast Guard house, but maybe they know, well, gee, I can get a snack at these trucks, and it's kind of cute. I guess I don't want to repeat it. I have been calling the Department of Public Works for 2 to 3 months now to get a crosswalk put in where there's a children's playground on Boone Street and Congdon, across from the Pier Wash Tub Laundromat. When they paved over in the summer with that gravelly stuff, I don't know what you call it, that blue stone. Does anybody know what that's called? What's it called here? Crushed stone?
Crushed blue stone, isn't it?
Well, whatever. They paved over the crosswalk. And at that corner of Boone Street and Congdon is the Boone Street Station Playground. There's a bus stop for children, and there are people that are trying to get to the laundromat. The Department of Public Works has insulted me by saying, just repeatedly passing the buck, passing the buck, passing the buck. They're not going to do it. There's no, I could get out there tomorrow with a white paint and paint the crosswalk in. There's no stop sign there. And before we have a child or an adult or an elderly person hit by a speeding car, and by the way, on Boone Street, the cars are speeding constantly. They speed to work, they speed to school, and there's liquor licenses on Boone Street and off Boone Street. And I think there has to be some way to slow that traffic down, because it's a family area, there's elderly people in the neighborhood, etc. And it's a public hazard.
Was there a crosswalk there before the
There
road was?
was a crosswalk there.
Huh?
And I have not seen any slow signs. There isn't a stop sign there. I haven't seen any visible speed limit signs. The speed limit is not 50 miles per hour because you're a little bit late for work or you're late for school. You know, and a number of people have almost gotten hit by cars there. And I don't know what, and then when I called, they said, well, you have to put that in writing, and then you have to, that's a petition, and then we have to do a study on it. And I don't think that I should have to put that in writing. That's an obvious.
I think the manager's taking notes. Maybe she'll look into it, Pam.
The town manager or the Public Works
The
Department?
town manager can look into it.
I
with
don't know
Public
the
Works.
personnel at all. I just know that there isn't a, thank you. There needs to be the crosswalk replaced and some kind of speed limits put up or flashing lights or something, you know? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Kegels. There used to be a crosswalk there. I didn't even know it was gone.
Thank you, Ray Kegels, 71 Kenyon Farms Road. For what it's worth on the truck issues, I agree with Mr. Brady. But my main purpose for getting up tonight is to congratulate the town manager and the police chief for attending the Rhode Island URI Student Senate last week. And I only know what I know of it pretty much from what was in the papers. It sounds to me like it was a decent start. Hopefully it'll lead to a dialogue. I think one of my main points would be that we expect respect from students, and to get that we have to show it to them. They have indicated some concerns, some gripes, and I think we have to listen to that and talk to them about it. And hopefully, in my mind, that can lead ultimately to an adult conversation about alcoholism, and by which we could do some real good for these kids. So that's about it. But I thank you for starting that conversation.
Ray, I went with PM and Dean. It was a wonderful opportunity, great dialogue, a lot of differences, but it was a great beginning, so I enjoyed it immensely.
I wish I could have been there.
I bet you do.
Mr. Alba.
Al Alba, 24 Eagles Nest Terrace, and I wasn't able to attend last meeting, but I still like to know how much money we made on that concert, the Philharmonic. I mean, we say we need money to build a pier. Well, there should be enough money there to build something. We do need a pier because it's Narragansett Pier. And also, I got a cup here that has all the famous places in Rhode Island, and Iggy's is one of them. And Durkins seems to go out of his way to stop them from building a building that will create lots of revenue for the town, because they give lots of charity and whatnot. So that here you have the Coast Guard House, you have got a whole bunch of things here. And one of the pictures on the cup is Iggy's Doughboy stand. So we should be able to get them to build that building. Somehow they keep postponing it. I guess he has enough money to buy off the people so that they wouldn't be there. And this has been long going on. And also, how much money did we raise at the Narragansett Philharmonic?
I hate to tell you this, Mr. Alba, but we don't make any money on the Philharmonic concert. We lose money as a town on that.
You lose money on the town, yeah?
Yeah, we do. No, I'm sorry. We don't make money.
I'm surprised because it's $5 a car, and the place is jam-packed.
I don't believe we charge. With Mr. Wright, the
Yeah,
Parks and Recreation Director is right there. No, we don't charge that night
Yeah,
for parking.
We charge.
No, we don't.
Well, I could charge $5. Someone's putting it up in their pockets.
Oh, you collect the donations.
Yeah.
I thought you meant for parking, excuse me. We don't charge for parking that night.
No, not at night, but for the
Okay.
Philharmonic, they did charge.
I understand now, thank you.
So, and when I told him about building a pier, I mean, the last town manager was here, he said, you want to know where the pier was? Well, that'd be a nice attraction to prolong the tourist season by building a pier. And also, there's a breakwater. So I don't know if we have plans for building a pier or not, but I think we should build one.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Looks like that's it for the open forum. Sorry?
I have something.
Oh, you want, okay.
Stan mentioned it a little earlier about the editorial in the Times and the Independent in reference to a candidate riding around into the Eastwood Look area and the observations that he made. It appeared in the Narragansett Times and also the Independent. I find civilians riding around in police vehicles very troubling for several reasons. The liability is a major concern. What happens if there were a car accident, a shooting, or as a result of this ride, he gets involved in some other police matter? I'm kind of interested as to who gave him permission to ride in the vehicle, and I think it was a very poor decision. It's a nonpartisan government we have here, and we shouldn't be making it partisan. If he shouldn't be pursuing his campaign and his political interests at the taxpayers' expense, tying up police officers and town equipment. I'm referring to Mr. Tetzner. Mr. Tetzner is the same man who several years ago proposed raffling off an assault weapon to raise money for the Republican Party. That was right after the shootings down in Newtown, Connecticut, if you remember, when all the children were slaughtered down there. He should know better. And this town should not allow things like that to happen. If he wants to pursue his political career, let him pay it out of his own campaign funds or his own pocket, however he wants to do it, not at our expense. And not only that, he's in an area which is very, very sensitive to a lot of people. And perhaps maybe the editorial could have come out another way that was just add fuel to the fires down there. So I think it was a very bad decision, and I would like the town manager to, if you will, sometime before the next meeting, if you could give me a report as to how the thing started in the first place. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, move on to the consent agenda. Anyone have an item they'd like to remove? So make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We have a public hearing at 8. Can we move that up? Can we just do that now? No? Unfortunately, the next few items I think are going to be somewhat lengthy.
To make efficient use of the time if you want.
Go to 14, maybe.
Does it make sense to move on to possibly 13?
13 might take a bit.
Actually, yeah, James. Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, it's 7:59.
Oh, it is? Oh, okay,
Yeah.
good.
It's that clock.
That makes it easy. That clock's a little
We're
slow.
good
I'm
to
sorry.
go.
I apologize.
Yeah. You just have a minute for the stenographer to step?
Yeah. Welcome. Item is a public hearing on the application from Echo ATM of San Diego, California for a secondhand license at 91 Point Judith Road, Narragansett, Rhode Island. So I'll make a motion to open the public hearing.
I'll make that motion.
All in favor? All in favor?
Aye.
Welcome up Mr. Michael McCann, or Chief Michael McCann, from the Director of Law Enforcement Relations East for...
Correct. I'm a retired police chief in the state of New Jersey, actually.
Welcome.
Thank you. I handle government relations and law enforcement relations for Eco ATM. Our parent company is actually
Could you, just for public hearings, you need to swear people in, so if you could raise your right hand, please. Do you swear testimony about to give in the matter now in hearing should be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
And could you state your name again and spell your last name for the record so we have it
Sure.
corrected,
It's
please?
Michael McCann, spelled M-C-C-A-N-N.
Thank you.
Welcome. So our company is already in Narragansett. Our parent company is Outer Wall. We own Redbox and Coinstar. Another one of our business lines is Eco ATM, where we recycle and refurbish used electronics through an automated kiosk. So we're looking to place this kiosk in a Stop and Shop. Currently, the address is 91 Point Road, I believe? Point Judith Road. We currently have 5 locations in the state of Rhode Island. Stop and Shop we're in contract with for 16 additional locations in the state. I've provided a copy of our packet to each of the members here, and this kiosk has a number of security features that we deal with, and that's how I deal with law enforcement. There's several cameras that are on this kiosk. There's somebody live monitoring this transaction. All the information that we record from that transaction is shared with law enforcement, so somebody in Narragansett Police Department will receive all the reports of every device that comes in, including serial number, photograph of the seller, time of the sale, including their government-issued ID that we scan through a SureTech reader. That's the same reader that Homeland Security uses. We also capture a fingerprint or a thumbprint at that time of that transaction. So law enforcement will get a secondhand dealer report, which is on the 4th page. It'll include all the information about the seller, what we purchased, the device, the serial number, the photograph of the device, photograph of the license that the person presented, 3 images at that kiosk, as well as their thumbprint.
Great. Thank you very much. And any questions? Any comments? Any question or comments from the public? Looks like you're in good shape.
Great. I appreciate
Somebody can make a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And somebody can make a motion to approve the application from Eco ATM of San Diego for a secondhand license at 91 Point Judith Road, Narragansett, Rhode Island.
I'll move that motion.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Congratulations.
Good night. Thank you.
Moving on to number 11, new business, a motion to approve the installation of 2 20,000-gallon fuel storage tanks at the proposed Cumberland Farms, Inc. gasoline service station and convenience store located at 1141 Boston Neck Road.
I'll move that motion.
Second?
Discussion. Mr. Kenyon, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. For the record, I'm John Kenyon, attorney for the applicant, Cumberland Farms, Inc. Cumberland Farms is proposing the construction of a convenience store and gasoline service station at 1141 Boston Neck Road. The property they're proposing to lease is a portion of Lot 48 on Tax Assessors Plat N-A, which is in the process of being subdivided. The area that they will be leasing is approximately an acre and is in a BB zoning district. As you see on the board, that's the acre that they'll be leasing. It's not the entire site. They received the necessary approvals from the zoning board for the convenience store and the gasoline service station. However, the Narragansett Town Code under section 26-21 requires that the town council approve the installation of any underground storage fuel tanks over 1,000 gallons. We're proposing 2 fuel tanks, 20,000 gallons each, so that's why we're here before the board tonight. I have with me Eric Prevey from Decreed Engineering. Eric, if you can come up and maybe just briefly describe where the tanks will be located and the type of tanks you're proposing.
Do I need to be sworn in? Identify yourself. You don't need to be sworn in. It's not a public hearing, sir. Okay, thank you. Eric Prevey, P-R-I-V-E. I'm a registered professional engineer with Decreed Engineering. Offices at 2 Stafford Court in Cranston, Rhode Island.
And Eric, could you just explain to the council, have you worked with Cumberland Farms in installing fuel tanks in other sites?
Yes, we have.
Approximately how many?
5 right now. Yeah, 5. Give a quick overview.
Sure.
So the tanks are located centrally, actually exactly centrally, right behind the dispensers there. They're known as kind of toe-to-toe, rather than sometimes you see them side by side, but that's a toe-to-toe configuration. It's centered in the site there. It's 60 feet on both sides, so it's completely centered on the parcel behind the dispensers, and it's 70 feet back from the front as well. They are typical. It is a permitted through the Department of Environmental Management's UST program. That's the Underground Storage Tank Program. They do all the permitting and make sure that it meets EPA regulations, et cetera. They are double wall fiberglass tanks. They have monitoring equipment between the walls as well, so that you're able to tell if there was ever a breach from either side of it. So either from exterior or from interior, there would be an alarm that went off in advance. The lines to go from the tanks to the dispensers also have secondary containment too, so that's double lines as well there. State of the art, it's a Vita route system as well for the dispensers. There's a fire suppression system, all very typical for installations of fueling stations in the state.
And do the location of the tanks meet the town's requirements for setbacks under the zoning ordinance?
Yes, they do.
Nothing further, we can answer any questions the council or the audience has.
I just have a question for Mark. So it went to the zoning and it went to the planning and approved both sides, 5-0. I did a little work on that. I guess I'm trying to understand the ordinance for us. So anything that's over a certain amount in the tank, we have to approve, even though it's been approved by those two boards?
It was actually news to me. Don't remember ever having one of these before, and that goes back a few years. So my recollection, or my best guess is looking at the code reference, it's 1986, last time there was recodification, and so this actually predates that. I suspect strongly it's one of the old ordinances that existed before there was a lot of regulation coming through DEM relative to USTs, underground storage, runoff and things. All those environmental regulations have been developed over the last 30 or 40 years. So at that point in time, it probably was a provision put in by the council to ensure they had some control over the location of underground storage tanks of 1,000 gallons or more. That's my best guess. It makes sense. Since these years, or since back then, the DEM has developed a very significant enforcement program and permitting program for USTs to make sure that they are installed appropriately, correctly, safely. So that's kind of where the regulatory strength lies right now. Zoning and planning both have looked at it. But this still exists on the books as you have to approve tanks in excess of 1,000 gallons.
So just for understanding, so maybe in the future we look at taking that ordinance off the books because of all the regulations that required. It's sort of one that's antiquated or, no longer?
Right. Unless there's some reason I'm not aware of, or unless the council wishes to retain it, it's probably something to take a look at as to whether it's outlived its usefulness.
Okay, thank you. I just had a couple of questions for Mr. Kenyon. So this process, started last year for the planning and the zoning? Is it February, March? Because I think I came to a couple of them. Is that when it started?
It started the beginning of the year, probably February or March.
And there were public hearings held for the people of the Narragansett to come to and share their opinions too?
Yeah, we were in front of the planning board 3 or 4 times, and then the zoning board for a public hearing.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sure you'll be back up with more questions. Any more comment? Questions? Yes, sir.
My name is Michael Murgo. I live at 137 North River Drive in Narragansett. And I am highly opposed to this gas food mart that's about to possibly go in. On the basis of traffic, which is unbearable during the summer, but we live through it because of the beach areas, et cetera. People are visiting us. People are not going to visit us if we allow a business like this to expand beyond the road size and the traffic that we presently have. For those 10 weeks during the summer, I feel this additional compounded traffic would make an existing traffic dangerous, more dangerous than what it is already. Will it lead to another traffic light? Why do we need another gas station that's only a couple of 100 yards up from one who put in a tremendous amount of renewal of their property, made it nicer. Why do we need another gas station there? Why do we need 8 places to start with? Besides being only a couple hundred yards away from that gas station, there's also other businesses that could be possibly affected. Those drugstores that sell milk, Rock's Market, which is 13 years in standing and has an excellent reputation. I plead to you to deny this application, and to repeat myself, traffic and safety being a reason, a traffic light possibly needed to control it, and what happens to the businesses and the employees of people who are now working? What happens to those people? Thank you very much.
So
Thank you.
you brought up a great question, a traffic study. I'm just curious if that happened in the process to Mr. Kenyon, because he brings up a good point. I live up that way too. Just curious if that had happened during all the work that you did.
Yes, during the process with the planning and zoning boards, Cumberland Farms had their own traffic study prepared, and we presented that before both boards. The planning board requested a peer review of that. This council actually approved the company that did the peer review. They made a presentation before the planning board. In essence, they basically agreed with the findings of Cumberland Farms traffic engineers. It does not require a traffic light, and it did not have an adverse effect on the traffic in that area.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mengermish.
My name is Richard Vangermish, and I live around this particular area. And I guess 2 or 3 years ago, 4 years ago, we had a long discussion about the Montessori school, and I actually stood out there for 4 hours one day and did a traffic count for nothing, by the way. It was just as good as what the other people paid $20,000 for. And I made the point continually that this is just not safe anymore, especially when URI is in session. When URI is in session, it's not really the summer. The summer, we know there's a problem, but Montessori school isn't open. While it may be open, it's certainly not at capacity. We know this just plain isn't safe. When URI students are here, that road is an unholy mess. It's just plain not safe. In the summer, it's safe. Nobody's moving. They can't kill you if you're on your bike because they're not moving. The cars are in more danger from my bike than my bike is from the cars, because at least I'm going 2 miles an hour. And this is just one more add-on. I made the point 4 years ago that we do need a traffic light there, especially when URI is in session and when the Montessori people are coming and going. I haven't redone my study yet, and that study may not have had URI in session. But, and there, people, I know they don't want to go to class, they'd rather hang around Eastwood Look. And that's true of the faculty as well, but you got to show up. But at this point, between 8 and 10, or maybe 8 and 9, when the Montessori rush is, and then the Montessori rush out maybe from 3 to 4, when you add the traffic here, this is really bad. There are too many people making left-hand turns. It's wild. And so I'm not arguing against this Cumberland Farm thing, but I am arguing for a light. I don't think this is a minor matter at all, and it might be a light that just is on from maybe 8 to 10 2 to 4. Other times it would be a flashing light. But something has to be done. There is just too many eager people to go. And this is just another add-on to Montessori school and those affordable housing things that are next to Montessori school. Now, this is just too much for safety for old people riding bikes.
So, Richard, that's a great point. Pam, I know that it didn't require a light, but it is busy up there. Would that be something that, how does that happen if they say it doesn't require a light up there with the activity? Is that something you can look into, or is that something that couldn't happen? I'm asking anybody that would know the answer to that.
Mr. Kenyon might know.
Well, yeah, I think he might, because he just jumped up. Just curious, it said it didn't need a traffic light, but I just was curious if that could be a possibility. I mean, people in the north end keep talking about the congestion up there, so I'm just wondering.
Sure, I'll have Eric explain the process for a light.
Yeah, so typically, given that it's a state road, it would have to go through DOT and Department of Transportation. They would have to show and meet the threshold. So you can't just say you want a light. You have to show that it's merited through either safety issues and such, volumes and such. So as much as it may be wanted, it's completely up to the state after the threshold and the data is put together. Also, just from a locational for where the Cumberland Farms is to Montessori, it is north. It's not, if we're speaking specifically to this application, it's not directly across from the Montessori school, so I'm not sure how much the light would affect it, but.
It's not across from the entrance to Montessori.
Correct, it's not across from the entrance of the Montessori school.
But we could ask the state for a light, and then they would have to make that decision if we could have a light there?
Correct.
So why wouldn't we just try to do that anyway? I mean, we wouldn't meet the criteria?
No.
No? Okay.
Not likely.
Not likely. Thanks.
And again, we didn't present the traffic study to the council because we're here tonight for
I know, I was
the
just
underground
curious.
storage tanks.
I know, but congestion does come up and traffic comes up, so I did want to address it.
Any further comments or questions? Mr. Mannix?
I just want to be clear, so there's the ordinance, Mark, about the gas tanks, so we're really ruling on a very discrete, narrow issue. Is that what's going on here?
That's all I see, Matt. Planning and zoning has vetted this and approved it, and until I saw the agenda item, I wasn't even aware that there was still this ordinance in existing, and it's just on the gas tanks. It reads, no installation with the town of a tank or receptacle for storage of gas. That's what the limitation is over, I'm not reading the whole thing, but that's what
No,
it's
that's my understanding too, yeah. So, because, James, this issue's come up a lot in the north end. A lot of people are concerned, just as Mr. Murgo mentioned in his comments about the traffic increase. And it's something you hear a lot in the north end of town about, people are really concerned about this. So, and I actually told a lot of people that the town council wasn't going to be voting on this, that the zoning board was making the ultimate decision, just like almost every other situation. So now here it is. Because it's such a discrete issue, I would say it's kind of, we can't just ignore the whole picture that's in front of us. What I think first I'd like to ask, has a decision letter been issued from zoning? Do we know the answer to that?
I haven't received it. I don't know, Mike, have you done a decision letter?
It is probably in draft form, but we had already sent it, so I'd have to check with my staff.
So because there's a process, as James is aware of, Mr. Kenyon, after that letter goes out, there's a 20-day period to appeal the whole project and look at it. I think it would be premature for us to vote on this. I would ask to continue this until, let that appeals period run. If there's no appeal, then we can vote on it at that time. That's what I think we should do.
I just don't know if that's necessary since
But
we
you
can't
know,
go forward with the tanks.
that's fine, but what's going to happen in the appeal is it'll be said, well, the town council supports the project because they voted, right? That'll be characterized that way. So I think I would want to be careful of that because that's one of the frustrations that a lot of people have when appeals take place and there's discrete zoning ordinances that the sewer commission said it was okay, so there's this like snowball momentum that goes on. Planning board said it was okay, zoning said it was okay. Even here today, right? It's this momentum thing. Planning said it was okay, zoning said it was okay. So my point of view would be, let the decision letter go out, let that appeals period run, and then I would like to, then we could just vote on this, because then we would know what any final answer was on the overall merits of the project.
It's October 6th. It's October 6th. That's the problem, right? You're 3 weeks, 4 weeks before an election.
Right, I mean, and I don't know how quickly we'll have the letter, and if this council, how many will still be on the council if we have to come back and do this all again?
I'm not considering any election. I feel comfortable with it, and I appreciate his wanting to hold, but it sounds like we have a decision from the planning and zoning, so I'm good with that.
I'm happy to vote.
I'm happy to vote, so that's
I mean,
good.
Glenn, to be honest, I mean, the project itself, I care a lot. And a lot of people from the North End actually don't come out to these meetings as much, right? You hear a lot from them. They're a little more, they kind of live their lives. They let you know what's going on. I'm glad we did have some testimony tonight. But no, the project overall, zoning and planning's weighed in. And I have a different point of view than zoning and planning. So I'm happy to say that right now. But I think, why not have that appeals period run? I mean, if you wanted to vote on it now, if you want to force the vote, that's fine with me. So I just thought, let that process play out.
I don't think zoning and planning are going to come back with any different opinion regardless of whether we wait, right? I don't think.
No, there's an appeals period, though, that runs. That's what I'm asking for. So then, what if somebody appeals it? What if somebody appeals the decision, and then you have, right, and then what can you say in the appeal? One of your arguments could be, well, the town council was supportive of the project because they supported the gas tank minimum issue. And that's just my point of view. I mean, we can vote on it now. I didn't anticipate that we'd be voting on it. I'm glad to weigh in on it, but whatever, that was my thought, to let that appeals period run.
And again, we don't think it's necessary. We prefer a vote tonight.
I think the gas station is, it's probably not something everybody wants. It's not the most beautiful addition to the town's setting, but it is zoned for that purpose. I don't think there's really a rational basis to say no at this point. Maybe there is to delay it for a bit, but I mean, we're not experts in gas tank storage, or we can't pretend to be either. I mean,
The ordinance shouldn't even be on the books right now.
Right, I think this is the perfect example of something that should have been gone years ago, and all the not deregulation, but the steps you have to get something done in town or in the state this is almost a perfect example. And I'm not sure if whether we vote tonight, whether that will affect the appeal or not. It might, but it's not our issue to deal with. Like I said, I think this is just an archaic situation. I can't imagine who would install a 1,000-gallon tank these days anyway. Anything less than that in any event. So I think that's just an example of why it is in the past. I think we have someone who wants to speak. Ms. Doe? Can you come to this podium? Can you come to the podium? Twilight Zone here or what? Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
We're voting on the tanks, though, the ordinance on the tanks, right? Okay.
The issue is the tanks that Mr. Mannix mentioned. Ma'am, if you want to speak, you have to come to the microphone. I can't make an exception for you. There's a crowd in the audience and there's a crowd at home. It's not a peanut gallery.
Peanut gallery? I don't know what that means, peanut gallery. They sell a lot of prepackaged nuts, so. My question is, why does Narragansett need another corporate sandwich shop with 99-cent coffees that nobody else can compete with because they do such a big volume of business, Cumberland Farms. So my question is, why did it pass zoning? Why did it pass planning? When you have local people that are preparing coffee and sandwiches and that kind of thing. So that's just my question. Why was it approved to begin with?
Because it's allowed by the zoning ordinance in that zone. It's a free market.
Because it's allowed?
It's a free market. You can put any business you want.
You can't compete, and it's not really free enterprise when you've got a corporate coffee shop, corporate coffee. That's not a free market. That's a conglomeration. That's a conglomerate. Most people can't compete with that. Most little stores, most little restaurants around here, Cool Beans, there's a Dunkin' Donuts in the village. I think there's several other coffee shops, sandwich shops, local and healthier, that whether or not it's allowed or not, is it preferable? That was my question. Why does Narragansett need another? Why do they approve something that's not going to enhance the quality of life in Narragansett?
We don't
That's
have
my only
insight
comment.
into what happened at planning and zoning, so.
Pardon me?
I said, I'm sorry, we didn't go to the planning and zoning board, so we didn't gain insight. What we were asked to vote
So the
on.
town council is separate from zoning?
Correct. We were asked to vote on the size of the storage tanks, period.
What about the convenience mart?
We're asked to vote on the size of the gas
Tonight?
tanks being installed,
But
period.
it's not going to be separate from the convenience store.
Gas tanks is what we're
I
being
understand
asked to
that, ma'am.
decide,
But if
period.
you approve that, likewise, you've improved the convenience store.
Someone else approved that already. We're being asked to approve the size of the gas tanks. The rest is already approved.
Well, then it should be appealed, and you should hold the vote. Because I don't think the whole,
Your time is up. Your time is up, ma'am. Your time is up.
Thank you.
If I could just quickly address the issue she raised, the proposed Cumberland Farms convenience store is going to be taking the place of the existing one that's currently in the plaza there. So they're already in the north end. They're going to be just moving to the new location.
But it is going to be a lot busier, and there is going to be an increase in traffic.
Any further questions or comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
No.
3 to 2, the motion carries. Number 12, a motion to approve a request to obtain an easement over town property on Assessor's Plat P, Lot 329 on Point Judith Road, and various licenses for signage and landscaping.
I'll move that motion.
Second.
Discussion. Mr. Kenyon, welcome back.
Thank you. Once again, I'm John Kenyon, attorney for the applicant, OC Realty LLC. With me tonight is Anthony Del Vicario, who is the owner of OC Realty LLC. We're here tonight on a request for an easement over a portion of the town-owned property. I would like to explain the reasoning behind the request and also what we're proposing to do in exchange for the grant of the easement. My clients entered into a agreement to purchase the property at 360 South Pier Road. It's designated as Lot 284A and 284B on Tax Assessor's Plat P, which is up on the board. The proposed property is the 2 lots, which the pointer is now looking at. That's the building on it. That's the building known as the roller skating rink. My client, the access for the roller skating rink is the road that leads out to South Pier Road. My client's property doesn't front on South Pier Road, but his address is actually 360 South Pier Road. While doing his due diligence, he was looking into a way to provide better access to his property. In researching the title, we discovered the property was originally platted as a part of the Kenyon Farm Plat, which was recorded in 1915. That plat actually shows the road running from South Pier Road to the property at 360 South Pier Road. At that time, the deeds for all the properties gave the property owners the right to use and maintain the road. While looking at the town's tax assessor's plat map, Mike, if you can go back one, we noticed that the town owns property in front of the property we're proposing to buy. That's known as 329 on tax assessor's plat P. And in looking at it, it appears that the town had purchased or reconfigured the property in order to connect to the road leading out to South Pier Road. We discovered that the town in 1987 had purchased approximately 2,690 square feet of land from the property to the north, which now contains the Dunkin' Donuts, for the purposes of connecting to that road. That hasn't been done for a number of reasons, including the cost of installing and maintaining the road, among other things. I was a comprehensive plan workshop of the planning board, and they discussed this area in general, just as we were discussing the north end traffic issues. The comprehensive plan cites this location as having serious traffic problems. And the planning board discusses one of the goals to resolve those as a potential connector road in this area. The only place I could think of that would happen is with this property. This all led to our request for the easement. We submitted a proposed easement and maintenance agreement along with a meets and bounds description, and then also a plan showing the easement area. That's the one. The easement is shown on the right of this plan, and it shows coming in across from Salt Pond Plaza, the light there, into the roller skating rink, and also there'd be access to the Adventureland playground to the right there. In exchange for the granting of the easement, my client is proposing the following conditions. One, that he would have the road engineered, the change to the light engineered. He applied to Rhode Island Department of Transportation for the permits to do the work. He would pay for the upgrade to the light. He would pay for the installation of the new roadway. He would also pay to upgrade the road from the new roadway out to South Pier Road. Those changes would have to be approved, reviewed and approved by the town engineer also. In the proposed maintenance or the easement agreement, they've agreed to maintain the new road and the existing road into perpetuity, and the cost of maintenance would be tied directly to the ownership of the roller skating rink property. The easement agreement also contains language indemnifying the town for any damages that could potentially occur on the roadway. We realize that the language, the indemnification agreement, would have to be reviewed and approved by the town solicitor. We have submitted that along with our package. We're also requesting a license agreement to install a sign plaza. If you look up at the plan, the pointer's looking at an area right there. We're proposing a sign. The town, under the zoning ordinance section 7.18G, permits the town council to approve sign plazas for signs on town property for the use of businesses in that area. The proposed sign would meet all the dimensional requirements under the zoning ordinance. It'd have to be approved by the town, and it would provide signage for my client's property as well as the other property owners that use the proposed connector road. We're also requesting a license in order to landscape the remaining part of the property, just to beautify that area. There's some nice landscaping to the north of this. We thought it'd be nice to tie that in. The landscape license would be revocable by the town at any time and would not interfere with the town's use of that property. Right now, my understanding, I believe in my letter I put that there was a sewer pump station. It's actually a water pump station that's there, also along with a water vault, I believe. We submitted a cost estimate for from VHB Engineering for the upgrade of the light, the construction of the new connector road, and the upgrade of the existing road out to South Pier Road, and that came to $402,270. So what we're proposing tonight is the town grant the easement over the town property. My client would pay for those costs along with the cost of maintaining both roads forever. Mr. Del Vicario is with me tonight. If you have any questions, we can answer them from the council or from audience members.
So obviously the big question is, what's it for? But I know you don't want to answer that. But it's hard for us to approve something without some indication or some idea of what's going to go in, right? Because it could be anything. Like it's zoned for.
It's zoned commercial. The users that he's been talking to are retail users that would be permitted by right. They wouldn't require a special use permit. He's talked to some that would use it as is, but the better potential users would like the access road. So we believe that by doing this, it will give the town a better retail presence there.
Any discussion? Questions? Comments? None from us yet, but there's some in the background. So, Mr. Bengermish.
It's clear the town has a great asset here. What rational people do who hold assets that are in demand, they raise the price. They don't give it away.
Thank you. Yes, sir. That's Mike. Mr. Riley, I didn't recognize him. Sorry.
Hi, okay. I'm incognito. It seems to me that this is really premature. This is a very heavy trafficked area that affects a lot of the businesses and even just the human traffic walking back and forth here between Mariner Square and down to the Dunkin' Donuts and so forth. I don't know of any way or reason why this council would give an easement to someone without even knowing what it was about, or a traffic study, or anything else. This is probably 2 years ahead of time.
Thank you. Mr. Kenyon, he does have a point. I mean, is there a way we can sort of figure out how to, I mean, it does seem like it's a little bit ahead of the curve. I mean, we grant the easement and then nothing happens. What happens then?
I'm not sure what you mean. If he never develops the property, then, well, we could put in there that the easement's revocable if it's not constructed in a certain amount of time. I mean, when people talk about giving it away, we're actually proposing to spend almost $500,000 to provide what we believe is going to be a benefit to the businesses in that area and might also solve some of the traffic issues that are in there now. When you speak of it being premature, as I stated, the town bought that area where you can see they were proposing a curve there in 1987, and nothing's ever been done. So this has been, and in talking with the town staff, they've been looking to do this for a while. Because of various reasons, they just haven't been able to. I think we're giving the town the ability, with just the grant of an easement, my client's going to spend all the money to put in the road, upgrade the light. It's going to have to go through a full traffic study because DOT is going to have to approve everything. That's a state road. So VHB is going to submit the full traffic study to them. They're going to have to approve the light and the new road.
Any other comments, questions, concerns?
I don't get it.
What's that?
I don't get it.
Right, I think Yeah, I think we're all in the same position. Not that I can't speak for everybody else, but I think we're all in the same position.
Yeah.
And we understand that you need the easement, but I think we have to fashion something that gives us some confidence and also provides you some reason to go forward with your studies and everything like that. I mean, I'm sure that it's going to come to fruition, but for us to grant this now and have this the document signed just seems like we're just jumping ahead. Can we refer it to the planning board or the zoning board or the planning department and get some more guidance? And that, I know it's a delay for you, but it's a difficult proposition for us.
But we understand if you want the planning department, the police department, town engineer, public works to all give their input on this. We've met with them, and it seemed like they were all in favor of the project. So we're happy for the council to get that input.
Right, we didn't get much in the way of our package from actually the town, more from you, which is good, but I think it's mostly from the applicant versus the staff, which I think would happen
It went to
anyway.
the planning board? So it did go to the planning board, or it did not?
No, this is not going to we
Yes.
met with Mike DeLuca.
Yeah, so I think the president's recommendation to bring it to the board, let them vet it out to better understand it, then bring it back, because I feel like I don't really completely understand what's behind the project, and so I would feel more comfortable with the zoning or planning kind of giving a recommendation, because it seems kind of, I'm very unclear of it, actually.
I mean, normally the zoning board wouldn't be involved. I think it would be the planning board that it would go to.
Okay,
I have no problem going to them because every time I appear before them, on major projects, they talk about connector roads. In fact, the Cumberland Farms we were just here for, as a part of that subdivision approval, they required a connector road, which limited the amount of curb cuts out onto Boston Neck Road. Also allows the traffic to go from business to business without going on the main road, which is what we're trying to accomplish here.
And I like connector roads too. I know that would help the town, so if the planning board, looked at it, made a recommendation, it was, going to enhance the town and help, I think it's great. So I would echo the president's recommendation to bring it to the planning board and have a decision, and then maybe come back at a later time to us.
Does that make sense to you?
It's fine. I'd just like to get to the planning board as quickly as possible. I don't know what the agenda looks like, Mike.
We're still working on it. I can talk to you tomorrow about that.
Does that make sense? We can make this, amend this motion to refer to the planning board for review and have it come back to us with a...
Are there any specific items that the council's looking for the planning board to review?
Well, they're the experts. They've been through these things dozens of times. I'm sure they're busy anyway, but they would ask the right questions that we only get a couple of things like this a term, really, if that. So that's our hesitancy, which you can probably
I understand that it's somewhat unusual in that we're coming in and kind of acting as planners.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
And we understand you might want to go to your planning board to get a recommendation from them, and I'm confident enough with our proposal that they're going to be in favor of it.
All right, that would be great.
So,
can I make that motion to refer it to the planning board?
is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you very much. A motion to schedule a hearing to approve a request from Oceanside Condominiums for the approval of plans to install retaining walls, entrance pillars, and landscaping improvements in the Pier Market and the urban renewal area, and a motion to refer to the planning board.
I'll move that motion.
Second.
Is there a proposed date? No? Okay. Looks like there's no discussion. Sorry, Mr. Riley. No, I just said, was there a proposed date? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Number 14, a motion to approve the RFP request for proposal for the Middlebridge Restaurant Building and Cottage 95A prior to the town publicly soliciting proposal for both buildings.
I'll move that motion.
Second.
So wanted Steve or somebody to come up just to kind of go over the RFP, because there were a couple of interesting things in that. I know that there's been a vacant building at Middlebridge, and I know people are interested to know what they're seeking and what they're looking for. So I just wanted a summary, just kind of maybe some interested people might come out.
Yes, good evening. This is one piece of the master plan that we've been working on. This was actually referred back to the Land Conservancy Trust. Jill Lawler's here tonight. And so this is the RFP for the restaurant building. Unlike a bid proposal, this is really open-ended. So it's for the restaurant building. It's 996 square feet. If you're all familiar with the restaurant building, we took a tour this past spring. And we've also included 95A. So it has remained in its state since Hurricane Sandy, so it's unfinished. And so we're looking for someone to come in, give us a proposal, open-ended, to develop the restaurant building and possibly 95A and it has its restrictions because of the on-site wastewater disposal system has its limitations. So the building traditionally in the past was used as a Duke's or Wiley's, which was a light fare restaurant. So it does have its limitations, but so as we say open-ended, we're looking for someone to give us a proposal for a long-term lease, possibly adding a deck on, and possibly if they wanted to use a couple of the marina slips. But again, we worked with the Land Conservancy Trust, we worked with Jeff Cesarine's office, and Mark Masali has reviewed all of the specifications. So we've given it enough flexibility for a number of people to come forward and take a look at this, and hopefully someone will have some interest in it. So I think there's enough in here where I hope there will also be some interest.
Thanks, Steve.
Great, thank you.
The Land Trust has been working with Steve. As you guys might recall, the whole Middlebridge plan was kicked back to them. So I've sat in on several of those meetings, and it's been a long, process of trying to get piece by piece, get a good plan put together. The only reason this is coming kind of prematurely without the rest of the plan is because we want to kind of get it out there to get to see what's out there in terms of perhaps a restaurant use or something else. And again, it's the restaurant building and then Building A, which is the one just behind it. The restaurant building being where Duke's used to be. So, but it has been it was good that we kicked it back to the Land Trust because everyone's voiced their opinions on what they want. They looked at the language of the RFP. So, we had a struggle with an RFP in the past, as you may recall. So, so we felt this was the right way, and this way everyone's been part of it. And even if they haven't disagreed, they've had a voice in the process. And then obviously it's gone to Mark, going to Susan Gallagher, and now it's coming to us, and we told everybody in the end, town council is going to have to look at the whole thing in the end, so.
Before it goes out to bid, so it's been vetted through everybody,
So, Steve, just one last question. So when it goes out, how long before you get the people that are interested? Like, what's the window of time before?
Well, the dates we put on here are just a whole, these are November, December, but they're just a whole dates. But we're hoping to have a on-site pre-bid meeting down there at Narrow River, and then at Middlebridge, and then it would, we'll give some time because people have to take a look at plans and be able to to come up with some really hard numbers. So we're looking probably at a month after that. So hopefully sometime in December, early January. So we're gonna move it quickly. Susan's office has promised that she'd try to move it as quickly as possible.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
James, I'd also just like to thank Jill Lawler for stewarding through this process. She's the new chair of the Land Trust, and she's had to take on. It's been a long process as well, but a good one. So I just wanted to recognize her tonight. So,
thank you, Jill.
Mr. Vangermeersch.
It doesn't take much of a short-term memory to remember. This sounds very much like the kayak place. So please, if we're going to play the kayak place game, play it early. Say only Narragansett people can apply, but please do not go through what we went through last time. If it's an RFP, it's an RFP for everyone, and there's going to then be retrospective bias against non-Narragansett people. Please don't do this again. You did it once, Don't do it twice.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Number 15, a motion to approve the use of the miscellaneous repair and construction contract with Electrical Installations, Inc. to furnish and install hardware and software upgrades for the Seaport Village Pump Station in the amount of $10,425.
I'll move that motion.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Number 16, motion to award the bid for the purchase of rugged mobile computers and accessories from the lowest bidder, Island Tech Services LLC, in the amount of $12,687.
I'll move that motion.
Second.
Any discussion?
I have a question.
Mr. McLaughlin.
Did we, to the manager, didn't we discuss this? She's gone. Did we have a oh, it was for the manager, so. Do you remember, any council members, do you remember having a discussion about these computers?
I think we did during the budget process.
Yes.
And they were cut from the budget process, were they?
I believe so.
And here they reappear again, right?
No, we didn't cut the computers altogether.
Refresh my memory.
We had, there was some additional equipment that was being cut. We did, help me, Laura, there was,
We take a 2-minute break.
Until the manager comes back, too.
this is Scott's, right?
Well, if you can, Chief, if you can explain it, I guess we can do it.
The alternative was to buy these computers, right? There was,
Yes, originally there was a capital plan to include all the computers throughout the, all the vehicles. It was a $60,000 proposal.
that's
It
right.
was,
It's going to be 60,000, that's right.
It was reduced to the $15,000 to replace 3 of the laptops on the existing rescue vehicles, which need to be replaced. They're the computers that are used for our EMS billing purposes, and they're used up. They continue to crash, and they're on their way out, and they need to be replaced.
Okay, I was confused. I remember we had a discussion.
Yeah, it was the only thing that I kept in the capital, that small portion to replace those 3 computers.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Makes sense?
Yep. I remember.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Number 17, a motion to award the bid for pump station wet well cleaning to the lowest bidder, McVac Environmental Services, in the amount of $20,748.97.
I'll move that motion.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Number 18, a motion to approve the 4-year website hosting, support, and site refresh agreement with Civic Plus in the amount of $24,000, and authorize the town manager to sign the contract after review by the town solicitor.
I'll move that motion.
Second.
Discussion, Mr. Wojciechowski.
The only way to come up is that this is the only company that can provide this service. When I see that, I get a little nervous. I mean, the sole source, there's no competition. Is there some way that we could determine that this cost, $24,000, is appropriate, kind of in line with, how do we know that this is the right price?
This company developed the site for us, Stan, and they host it at their site. So in order for us to, unless we want to actually move the site to a separate company and spend more money for them to redevelop on a different software, we go with this company and do it for cheaper.
So this is, sometimes I wonder that, when once you get tied in with someone, they just keep on they come in with a low bid, and then they increase the cost later on. So now these upgrades essentially are much higher than they should be. So I'm sitting back there saying, is this 24,000, should it be 15,
So
How
it's
do we
over
know?
4 years.
4 years.
So it's $6,000 a year.
$6,000 a year for the whole site.
for the whole site.
And they're going to make changes during that time to improve it. Any problems, they're going to fix it.
And think about
At
that.
no cost. At no cost? Yeah, that sounds,
Pretty cheap, right?
that's okay. Thank you.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Number 19, a motion to introduce, read, and accept as a first reading an ordinance and amendment of Chapter 26, Fire Prevention and Protection, Article 3, Division 3, Firefighters, Sections 26 through 76 through 26 through 80 of the Code of Ordinances.
I'll move that motion.
Second.
Discussion. Anyone like to hear from the chief about the changes? Chief, do you want to come and just explain in short what the changes are? Just for our purposes.
This was just a proposal to amend, more or less clarify the existing ordinance on the books now, to try and clarify between what is needed for the application process and what would be needed at the time of appointment process. There was some language changes. One of the more important changes was to include, upon appointment, that a firefighter be an EMT cardiac level trained, as opposed to just a EMT basic level trained. The standards are increased. What we had as an EMT basic was generally a 30-year-old standard that started back, well, really before I was hired. If you could come on as an EMT basic and you were required to become an EMT cardiac at the expense of the town. Really, most of the towns now are hiring at the EMT level, EMTC level, and requiring those firefighters to become an EMTC upon appointment. Nothing says that they can't still apply as a basic and have usually about 2 years while they're on the active list or until they're called for the job to acquire the EMTC level. That was one of the changes. I can, continue with some of the other changes. There was some new language that included criteria that paralleled the police as far as a vision requirement to a correctable standard, as well as being able to determine color. There was a clarity on some language as far as what type of PPA or performance test you had to pass, who was going to be the administrator of the test, or who was going to be the sanction authorizer of the test, and that was the currently Rhode Island Association of Fire Chiefs. There was some change on that language. The requirements for written interviewing weights are still the same. The requirements for the preference criteria are still the same, with the new one being changed for minimum of 60 credit hours for a college or university level. Prior, it was just for a fire science degree, but we're looking at anyone really that would have 60 credit hours of a college or university level, and that again is in line with what the police hiring process is. We also granted 2 points for experience as a full-time career or volunteer firefighter, as well as an EMT as well. Prior to that, it was just the 2 points for experience as a Coleman firefighter.
So all these changes are pretty much just to come up to speed with current other towns, other places, and the police department itself?
Yes, we did keep what currently most of what we have on the books, but also just to clarify some language, parallel some of the things that the police have, and to bring up the standard of the EMT cardiac level.
Mr. President, the chief did meet with Mark and I twice, and he's met with the union, correct?
We did discuss some of these things in here as well, yes.
So it's
this
been
was
well
a long
vetted.
Vetted process between Mark and the town manager on this.
Great. Any further questions? Great. Thank you very much. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Number 20, a motion to introduce, read, pass, and accept as a first reading a resolution amending the official list of parking restrictions and regulations in the town of Narragansett in accordance with Narragansett Code of Ordinances.
I'll move that motion.
Second.
Discussion? This is a result of a number of complaints from residents on the street, particularly Inez, south of Kingston Road. Has become an issue with overnight parking. And I think, based on our experience, I think that this type of change is pretty inexpensive and pretty effective to deal with some of the quality of life issues we deal with in town. So I think that this type of thing is works, and I think it would be appreciated by the residents on that street.
So this is fine, but every time we have, and Glenna, we've lived this many a years as far as all the different restrictions, and they're all different. They're in that big book that we talked about, and then Scarborough Hills comes, and Arnez Street comes, and, you know, we had talked about really shoring it up and sort of going through it and making some sense of it. So, because every time we put a restriction, then somebody else wants one, and there's just no method to, and we had somebody, and the chief's not here tonight, but there was somebody that kind of looked at the different restrictions and parking in the town, and I still don't know where we are with it, because, I mean, Glenn, I don't have to keep reminding you about once we started in one area, then somebody else wanted something, and everything is so tightly impacted, and the overnight parking, I mean, I know on Narragansett Ave, they've loved it, Scarborough Hills loved it, so at some point, you know, it just keeps getting pushed down. So I don't know, I hate to say another committee, but as we have all those restrictions, maybe the chief over some time can go through them and we can have some conversation. I mean, I support this, but they do come up, people call once they see a passage on something, then they want it, and it's really.
Did we look at it at all holistically, Mike, and the comprehensive plan at all?
We talked about it a lot. Holistically. I mean, I think that's really something that has to be addressed. I mean, the parking issues across the town are always an issue, and now we have the tow policies and overnight parking is not allowed. I mean, we have some issues around it, and it definitely should be weaved into the comprehensive plan. I mean, I can support this, but I can bet you that there'll be another group that will come forward on it.
I mean, you might not get into it as much as sort of what hours are allowed, but whether you'd allow overnight or on street, or, you know, the profile of the type of parking you'd want to allow for versus on street or not, or.
I could ask the consultant to look into something of that nature. Maybe there are certain conditions that would be in play that would lead you to certain types of restrictions, depending on size of road or traffic or whatever. So I could ask about that.
It might just help in terms of, you know, modularizing the areas in the town that you'd even consider having that type of, you know, overnight or restrictions during hours or whatnot.
Mr. Wojciechowski.
Glad you brought that up, Sue. We want families in a town, and I had a family with 5 kids, so potentially I could have 5 cars, 6. So I could have 6 cars, and where do I park? I have a 5-bedroom house in Narragansett, in the Pier area, and now I have 5 kids. You want kids? And now I need to park 6 cars. And you're continuing to put restrictions on roads. So I can see there's a conflict here. We gotta be careful. I mean, I can see you can drive families out, because if I can't have my kids park the car, I can see we park them 3 or 4 deep, and it's a real mess I gotta get out early in the morning, the kid does, and vice versa. We're moving 5 cars every time we gotta get out of the driveway, so now we're parking on the front lawn, climbing a sidewalk. This parking restriction, it's got to stop, I think. I think we got to give our families a chance to park our cars on a lot.
Mr. Wojciechowski, you ever had a party on your street at night?
When?
Any night, ever?
Oh, yeah, there's been parties.
Yeah?
There's been parties.
How late did it go?
Well, my wife said we had, she was disturbed at 2
Not
o'clock
you,
in-
not parties that you hosted, other people's parties.
I've had other people's parties disturb me.
Yeah.
And again, I think coming to Narragansett, you kind of expect that. There's going to be some noise. You know, if you go I come from Warwick. Before that, at Fall River, we had 3-decker, 6-decker, 6 families in a place. So you're living with 6 families, you got noise. Well, coming to Narragansett was kind of nice. He's got only 1 family on each side or whatever. So compared to a 6-family home, the noise here is very minimal. And of course, noise, again, is related to drinking, really. It's a drinking issue. It's diseased. That's what the AA people tell me. Drinking leads to or is a result of a disease and should be dealt with that way, not by parking. Parking is not a way to deal with the disease of alcohol. Parking, it infringes on our freedom to use our piece of land.
I had a party on my street last weekend.
If you live
And
in
there was cars everywhere.
Yeah.
Would have been nice to have a parking ban. Then it wouldn't have been a fight outside my house at 1:15 in the morning.
Yeah, well, that's, you know, if you want to live in Narragansett, it's from I started here in 1961. In 1961, the parties were a lot worse, and it was known as the party school, and this was known as the party area. So if you want to be in Narragansett, then you have to be almost kind of with the party. I mean, even at my age, I know I might complain, she wakes up a little more than I do. I sleep a little better because I work hard all day. I think I work harder than her, so now I sleep so sound I don't hear the parties. So she wakes up and kicks me, hey, there's a party, what are you going to do? I said, let it go, Mary. Quick, take a pill.
Well, I saw she wrote a letter for you in the paper today.
Oh, I forget the letter. I forget
No,
what she
you
wrote
forget.
today.
Yeah, you forget. Yeah, that's,
Did we make a letter today?
You write to the Times. She writes to the Journal. I think she's got a better.
Oh, the
better
Journal
writing
made it?
style.
Did the Journal make it?
The Journal made it. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
All I know is I says we all have to, you know, when you live in really the problem is zoning. You've congested us. Eastwood Look, you put 4 or 5 bedroom homes on. You've congested us so much that we can't help but hear even the slightest noise. Like the other day, I heard, actually the kids were pretty quiet. They were talking very quietly. But at 1 or 2 in the morning, on the deck, it came out there. Because the congestion, it's the zoning ordinance. So you caused the problem by having the zoning order such that the houses were, and you continue to do that. I can see houses on these small lots. We got to get Mike DeLuca to stop that.
We're going to work on that in the comp plan.
We got to work on it. And it's not going to happen because we're 85% developed. So now the developers are going to we're going to want to build on a 40 by 50 lot, and it's going to be allowed because there's nothing else available. But when you allow that, you're going to have noise. It's not only the college kids; it's fellow neighbors. The fellow neighbors with 5. I tell you, my 5 kids, they cause trouble. The neighbor up the street used to constantly call my wife and say, hey,
Mr. Wojciechowski, your time's up. Your time's up.
I know, but I'm thinking the families are. We need to have some property rights. So one of them is the ability to park on a street in front of a house. It's kind of nice, and I'll sacrifice.
Thank you,
I'll
Mr.
listen to the
Wojciechowski.
noise.
Thank you very
I'll listen to the
much.
noise to get my parking. Thank you.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. I'm sorry? What
Who
happened?
did?
You? And you can come up.
I'm Tyler Pavlik. I live at 15 Windward Circle in Narragansett, Rhode Island. I'm the liaison for Student Senate, and my big question was, I was just wondering, where specifically is this restricting parking now in Narragansett?
I'm sorry, what's the question?
Where is this new ordinance restricting parking now?
On Inez Street.
Inez Street? Okay, I'm just trying to make sure, that's all. Thank you.
You're welcome. Number 21, a motion to introduce, read, pass, and accept as a first reading an ordinance and amendment of Chapter 46 of the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Narragansett, Rhode Island, entitled Miscellaneous Offenses.
I'll move that motion.
Second.
Discussion.
Pam, you just want to explain what this is?
This was an omission that was made when we increased all of the alcohol-related fines. A citizen brought it to the Chief Hoxie's attention. He brought it to my attention. We talked to the solicitor. We talked to the town clerk, and it's before you. It was truly an oversight to leave the minors. Every other alcohol-related offense has gone from 200 to 500, but minor in possession of alcohol did not, so we're asking you to move it to 500.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Number 22, a motion to approve the settlement and authorize the town manager to sign a settlement agreement to resolve litigation that was filed against the town by George and Elizabeth Isdale.
I'll move that motion.
Second.
Any discussion?
Mark, can you describe what's going on
Sure.
here?
2 tax appeals are filed annually, and the assessor, acting assessor, negotiated a resolution he thought was appropriate, sent it to me, and we put together a settlement agreement. It results in a reduction in valuation that will refund approximately $9,000 in taxes over 2 years. And they will be used as credits as opposed to a cash refund.
And it's been dragging on for a while.
This is 3 years old. We would have another appeal filed next week if we didn't resolve it for this year, so it would be an annual appeal.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Number 23, a motion to discuss the zoning board of review.
I'll move that motion.
Second.
Mr. McLaughlin.
Yeah, I requested this to be put on the agenda for discussion purposes only. I've received a few complaints from people who have appeared before the zoning board, and they had the zoning board was canceled due to a lack of a quorum. Over 8 times. A couple of the people, it cost them a substantial amount of money because they have to hire attorneys and expert testimony people, and it's caused a great deal of financial hardship for some of them. That's part of the problem. The other one is the room itself. I'm having a problem with the room. There's like 36 seats in that large conference room. And the last zoning board meeting that I stopped in to watch for a while was packed. There was a man offering testimony before the board. He was standing in front of the conference table in that large boardroom. He was speaking, and nobody in the room could hear him. There was a little bit of a buzz or noise going on in the room, and the assistant solicitor actually had to get up and walk out into the hallway and play hallway monitor to clear the people out of the hallway because of the noise. Now that's not fair. It's not fair to the zoning board to expect volunteers who work hard all day long to go sit in the zoning hearing board, volunteering their time in cramped quarters like that and have to work under those conditions. They probably should be in this room here, a larger room where they have more space, they have microphone available to discuss their business, and I think we have to have some major changes there. My recommendation would be to have the chairman of the zoning board sit down with the council in a work session and go over some of the means maybe we could use to make it a better place and make it more productive. Maybe they need to meet more often to reduce their backlog. And overall, I think we need to sit down and talk and see if we can resolve some of those issues. The other thing, the other question I had, and the other thought, maybe we should think about it and talk about it, is maybe I understand it has to be a charter revision and a change to the law, being able to add alternate members to the board to give them some relief so that they can take a day off from when it's necessary if they want to go on vacation or whatever without postponing meetings. I'm sure that's going to be a detailed thing, but it's something we could talk about if we're having a work session with that zoning board. I think it's very important that we do it. It's because it's becoming a big problem. The manager mentioned it to me a month after she came on board here, stating it was a problem then, and I didn't hear any more about it for a while until just very recently when we got the list of the minutes of the meetings that had to be canceled because of the lack of a quorum. So if the council's agreeable, I'd like to see if we could set up a meeting with the zoning board chairman or some of his members if he decides to do that, and see if we can resolve some of the problems we have there to make things go a lot more smoothly than what they are.
Do we have alternates? Don't we have alternates?
Yeah, we do. I was just going to say, first of all, I think I see Jimmy Manning in the back, and he is the chair of the zoning board. So maybe before we have another workshop, maybe he could speak to the boards, you know, the room, what's been going on, because I know that there was a number of reasons why there weren't quorums. There was a death, I think, from one of the zoning. Why don't you explain what you can about how the board's functioning today and about the alternates we have?
Okay, thank you, Sue. Jim Manning, chairman of the zoning board. It's been a tough 7 months for the board. We had an extraordinary circumstance. We lost 3 members. Mr. Baxter resigned. Doc O'Neill, Bob, moved out of town. Then Mr. Kelly resigned. And the unfortunate passing of Bob Mulligan's wife, Martha. So we were dealing with that. We've got a full board now, thanks to you people, and we're getting back on the right track. As a matter of fact, we've got 3 meetings scheduled this month to try to catch up. We've got the 9th, the 23rd, and the 30th. So we should be in pretty good shape at the end of this month. Hopefully we'll be caught up and you know, back in the game. So, but it's been it's been extraordinary. To be honest with you, I don't know how long I've been on the board. I haven't even looked. It's been a number of years, and it's the first time that we've ever had an issue like this. It would happen occasionally, but we went through a stretch, and it was very unfortunate. Mike will tell you, we've had many special meetings to try to get caught up, so we're doing our utmost.
Jimmy, can I just ask you, you know, I know they're volunteer positions, they're 5-year positions, but we have 2 alternates, correct? So we're not running short. We have 2, we just appointed
We have a full board
Joe
right now.
Paglia
We have 2
and
alternates.
John Kennedy, right?
We have 5 full members and 2 alternates,
Right.
yes.
And then just to the room, because I was at the meeting too, and I'm just curious, we had spoken about the crowded room, and just tell us what your practice is on the board. I'm just curious, when there are big groups, do you come into the chamber?
Well, what we try to do is just a lot of times we will get it's a very uncomfortable room. Mike and I have talked about different plans for it. Nothing's come to fruition yet. But if we have a large hearing, if those people are not being heard or not involved in the hearing, we ask them to stay outside. Well, we'll keep a smaller group in the room so people can hear. Unfortunately, what people have to realize is when testimony is being given, it's not being given to the public, it's being given to the board members because we're the ones that make the decision. So we need to hear it. Unfortunately, sometimes the public does not hear it.
But the public needs to hear it. They should be able to hear that.
I agree.
And the part that I saw the other night, the man that was testifying, I don't even know what the matter was because I couldn't hear it because of the noise, but I couldn't hear him at all. And I'm less than 20 feet away from him. And the point I'm making about the room itself, I mean, it's not a comfortable place for you to work there. I don't think, not from what I've seen. I mean, I wouldn't be happy sitting in there for 4 hours after working all day, and have to deal with that. I mean, it's not comfortable. And it's got to affect, you know, the way you feel and everything after about an hour and a half of that.
We've actually had, not to interrupt.
But anyway, that was one of the problems. There's 36 chairs in that room at your meeting the other night, not counting the ones around the conference table. And that's an awful lot of people put in that room on a night where it's too cold to turn on, it's not cold enough to turn the heat on, or vice versa, the air conditioner. You turn the air conditioner on there, you can't hear anything anyway, or at least I can't. So those are the things I thought we could talk about, even if it was changing the night to be able to use this facility here. I think it'd be much more comfortable. And the only reason why I mentioned adding the alternates, I mean, I know it's a law change and everything else, but if you had 2 more extra alternates there, it would probably be more convenient for everybody there. That's the point I was trying to make. And that, I understand, I can't do right away anyway. Am I right, Mark, by saying that? That has to be a charter change and a law change, but for the purposes of discussion, I thought that that's maybe what we should do. Think about those things. To make things easier for you.
Yeah,
You could come up in winter season and have 3 members of that board sick with the flu, and have a person stand outside with an attorney and 5 or 6 expert witnesses, and you have to tell them to go home. And a stenographer, I don't know if they use stenographers, I guess they do, right?
Excuse me?
Tell them to go. I mean, that's not fair. That's
Listen,
just not fair.
I mean, again, I think what I heard was this generally doesn't happen. I think, you know, Gene Kelly, I think, resigned and left an alternate position vacant because I think the man was personally insulted that we did not, he sat there for years waiting to become a permanent member, and we basically blew him off, and we selected somebody else, you know? That was the council's choice. He got insulted, and we, you know, I think it was his right, so he resigned. We left an alternate position empty. Then, you know, heavens, Martha Mulligan passed away. That was an awful tragedy. So, unfortunately, Bob Mulligan was unavailable for a period of time. You know, a series of unfortunate events, and that happened in a very, you know, back-to-back time, and so that created a circumstance where in a, you know, short period of time there was a number of meetings that unfortunately had to be rescheduled. I don't know about you, but I don't know that that's going to happen, you know, over, you know, an extended period of time or more frequently. You know, if you guys want to have more alternates, that's completely up to you, but I don't see it happening on the planning board that frequently. Mike, I don't know if...
Glenna, that was well said, and to be honest with you, I don't want to have a workshop with the volunteers from the zoning board. I think if the manager talks to the chair or whatever, I don't know that, I think all the things that she just described happened. They were unfortunate. I don't think they're going to happen again. We did put 2 more alternates on, so I do think we can move forward with this. I don't know that we have to have this dialogue. It seems like they're very competent people that can get the job done. So I don't mean to, Doug, I'm collaborative. I like to talk and work with people, but I think they're good.
There were more meetings than us this month.
I wasn't proposing adding more people to the zoning board or even changing the law. I just threw it out there for discussion as perhaps maybe a remedy to solve the problem. That's all it was. We still haven't solved the space issue in there. I don't know how the rest of the council feels about that.
I think if this room is available when they meet, I'm happy to...
So we're right back to, I guess there isn't a problem. I'm sorry I even raised the issue. They can't possibly be a problem. The people who come to me and complain, they don't know what they're talking about, I guess.
No, Mr. McLaughlin, we definitely, I mean, there have been some issues.
I was just trying to be helpful. That's all I was trying to do. And I have absolutely all the respect in the world for everybody that serves on these committees in this town, because they have to make a lot of personal sacrifices. And quite frankly, I was just trying to make things a little easier for you instead of stuffing you in that room and having to go through the testimony that I had to see on the 3 times that I attended the zoning meetings there. That's my only motive, my only purpose. That's what it was.
Well, that's greatly appreciated.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kelly.
Mr. McLaughlin,
Can you just state your name and address, please?
Yeah, sure. Gene Kelly, 34 Edgewater Road, Narragansett. I was on the zoning board for 3 years as an alternate member. And I want to thank Councilwoman Hagopian for your comments. For 3 years, I was an alternate. This year, I was called to an interview process, which included all of you. Mr. McLaughlin, you talk about fairness. You never asked me one question in that interview. Mr. Callahan, you did, and so did you, Mrs. Cicilline Bonanno. For whatever reason, after me spending night after night as an alternate member in this chamber, the three of you decided not to reappoint me. And that's right, you blew me off. I spent 6 years on the Warwick City Council. I know a little bit about the law and about zoning. But here's the fairness issue, Mr. McLaughlin. You didn't ask me one question, but you certainly didn't vote for me either. And I'm going to tell you what was created in this town. Word gets out, and this is the word, that you can serve on a committee in this town for 3 years, and when it comes time for a 5-year position, you don't get one. And I have to ask a question. Why?
Let me respond. I was on the Harbor Commission for over...
Oh, and by the way, in my time, I never saw you at one zoning board meeting, so
No.
just so you know.
No, that's right. I served on the Harbor Commission for 10 or 12 years. And in that 12-year period, I think 6 of them or more, I was an alternate. And during that 6-year period, there was at least 5 or 6 people that were appointed permanent positions over me. So...
What I'm saying, sir, is the climate that's been created, the climate of someone coming on a board, serving for 3 years. And I'm going to tell you, it's not just me. People have approached me. I'm fine with it. I will not serve on another board. I don't want to be part of that. I served, I came to the meetings, I was here, I showed up. I was here. And what happened was there was a judgment call that the 3 of you made that you didn't want my services any longer. That's fine, but that word is now on the street. So don't be surprised that more, and I've talked to some people, don't be surprised if some of those people don't show up, have poor attendance. Why? Because they're not sure they'll get reappointed either. So keep that in mind when you reappoint to other commissions in this town. Because I'll tell you one thing right now, everyone I talk to, I would tell them, do not serve on a committee, because you probably, for whatever reason, will not be reappointed.
Gene, thank you for your service to the town and for doing the alternate position for 3 years. I definitely appreciate it. And I said that at the meeting 3 months ago when we had these appointments. And there were former members of the zoning board who did contact me and say that that was pretty rare to not renominate somebody to go from the 1 year to the 5 years. So first of all, I want to thank Gene for his service, and it did create kind of a poisoned well, that vote, and that whole summer that's come since then is part of the people know that in town, that it created a poisoned atmosphere. So I'm glad you cleared the record and let people understand that.
Well, I wanted people to be clear, too, the reason for my resignation. I wanted that to be clear to everyone in this town. I would have happily served, and I requested a 5-year appointment, which I felt I earned it, Mr. McLaughlin. And you never asked me one question. I have to say that Mr. Callahan did, and Mrs. Cicilline Bonanno asked me a question. I came before the interview process. People will not want to serve, and unfortunately, I think what's happened is you're going to see a further deterioration.
Gene, I got a comment. So a few years ago, I think I was the person that appointed you to the board, correct?
Yes, correct.
And I thought you did a great job. Did check around on attendance and had some issues around that for me. There was a candidate that I thought that could be an added value to that committee. And so it was nothing personal. It was about making a good decision for the board. So I know you felt blown off or hurt, but I did my homework, and I appreciate your service and happy to put you on, and sorry that it didn't, but it's not personal. It's about the dynamics of the group, and you could have participated as the alternate. You chose not to, but at the end of the day, the council interviews for the zoning and the planning, and then they make the best decision that they can. They can't please everybody, and I'm sorry that you were disappointed, but I thank you for your service, and I'm sorry that you're so upset about it. And I did reach out to you because I felt badly about it.
No, you did. My point simply is, when you want people to come and serve who have experience, word gets out, they will not serve.
I think that's a good point, because, you pay your dues, right? You serve as an alternate, you earn into the permanent position. So there's no reason why people with no experience don't get that alternate position. And I think it certainly set the tone for other people who might want to try it out, come in as an alternate to earn into that long-term position. And I spoke my piece, Jean, you know, where I stand. I didn't even see you standing out there, so thank you for coming and saying your piece.
I want to, I'll close with this. Donald Goodrich, who you all know, who was chairman of that, said to me, Gene, serve your time, and as you stay as an alternate, you'll be appointed to a permanent 5-year position. I said, okay, Mr. Goodrich, thank you very much. That's what he said to me. So
And there are never any guarantees, right? But
no guarantees. No guarantees. Thank you.
Thank you. I think this is a discussion items. There's no action to take. The next item is number 24, a motion to discuss the quality of the televised council meetings.
I'll move that motion.
Second.
Discussion. Mr. McLaughlin?
This is in reference to several complaints I received about the quality of the video transmissions from the council meetings. Pam, I assume you had a chance to work on it. Do you have a report on that?
I have Mr. Holland here, who I had also received complaints from citizens, and he went to work on it right away, and I'll let Mr. Holland tell you what he found.
I was able to talk with PEG TV, which is who we send our broadcast signal to in Westerly. Our feed to them was fine. No issues whatsoever. They could say it'll be a little bit brighter, which we're going to work with a new camera. From there, Westerly area itself channel 17 was perfectly fine. But the issue came into play when you look at Narragansett, South Kingstown area. So they advised me to talk to the MTC with Cox Cable itself. After talking to them, they believed it was an issue coming from their Exeter switching station for Cox Cable that sends down to here into Narragansett and South Kingstown. I talked to them probably a week and a half ago, and it's been fixed. So the channel looks pretty good now.
Tonight, of course, will let us know.
Do we need a new camera or
We
not?
do. The camera we've got now has been in service since 1989. So
Does that have an effect on the transmission, the camera itself, or no?
No, actually, this camera does fairly well at what it does. The problem is it's so old now.
Do you think it's been resolved now, Dan, or do you think it's still a
yes.
problem?
It's fine now.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Dan, thank you very much for your help.
Anytime.
Dan, the specific thing that I had heard was that sometimes when the camera goes from the audience to the people, to the 5 of us, then back to the audience and back and forth, that sometimes the sound is off. Is that something that you noticed when you've gone through it, or?
The camera swinging back and forth, you'll catch the lights, but you'll change the quality of the pictures. Nothing we can do about that.
Okay.
It changes the iris on the camera. The audio shouldn't have any.
It shouldn't
effect
have
in
an
there.
issue with that. Okay,
No.
so, okay.
No.
Thank you much. Mr. Lynch?
I actually spoke, there was a agenda item probably 2.5 years ago in front of the former council. I think it was a recommendation to purchase new sound equipment because the sound equipment then was inferior, and spoke in support of it. And just wanted to say tonight, I know this is good to talk about the quality for right now, but I would just urge the council and urge the administration to really take advantage of the televised sessions. I know you get feedback from people who watch it, but anything that could be done, I'm thinking if there's any way of making this a more powerful tool to reach out to the community. Not a lot of us that don't have that much else to do, can come to the meetings, but it's a tremendously enjoyable experience to sit home with a couple of cold beers and watch the open forum. And it would, I think, if you could just leverage this and nurture it a bit more, it can continue to be a really good communication device. Maybe even in the papers, I noticed they talk about significant meetings, but if we could just indicate which channels, which cable services have it at which channel, and even maybe small advertisements, because I think over time it'll turn into a two-way channel for you. And maybe even asking, you might be surprised, I don't think we could probably do a Nielsen survey, but it might be just at a meeting or two asking viewers to send a text or to send an email to let you know what the viewership really is, because I think that it's a very good connective mechanism for our democracy. So I just wanted to put in that blurb. And also, for the record, it was terrific. I didn't go to the coalition meeting. It sounded like we had a lot of good, but the young gentleman representing an office at URI spending all that time here tonight is probably emblematic of us starting to open up the dialogue more, and that's a good thing, too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Wojciechowski.
So, right, 10 years ago, I thought that all our meetings, zoning, planning, any meeting out there that's happening should have the opportunity to be on TV so people can become involved and know what's going on. It just seems like it's open government, a better open government to have all this televised. And now you're right, the room's big enough, and televise it. Thank you.
So is that something, if we went that route, we'd have to think about in the budget sessions?
I don't think we should, I mean.
Just to think about it. I'm not saying to do it, right?
Yeah, we can do it on, I don't know if we could do it all real time, but we could definitely do it on YouTube, right? I mean, I don't know, for low cost,
Can YouTube yourself?
right? I mean, you could digitize it. I don't know if you would be able to do it on public television for no cost, because there is a
Gotcha.
cost to doing it, but you could digitize it anyway, and you could put it on YouTube or sharing it on the website and make it available publicly.
What do you do it, Tom?
Well, zoning and planning.
The zoning and
Stan wanted
planning and
zoning
all of that.
planning.
Dan, any comments, Dan?
We already have the council meetings on YouTube. I don't know
Yeah.
if anybody's noticed. We get some decent amount of hits on that. If anybody wants to televise or record for rebroadcast, the meeting would have to take place in this room. We don't have the ability to move the equipment over there to record, so other than that, we could digitize it. and send it.
iPads. Zoning and planning, you got a little camera here, Dan. Check
They
it
can do
out.
that too, yeah.
You want to ask Dan? Think that covers it?
Thank
Anything
you,
else?
Dan.
That's it? All right. That concludes the regular agenda tonight. We have a executive session, a motion to retire to executive session of the Town Council at the end of the October 6, 2014 Town Council meeting in accordance with Rhode Island General Law 4246-4 to discuss collective bargaining regarding Rhode Island Laborers District Council Public Service Employees Local 1033 in accordance with Rhode Island General Law 4246-5A2 and to discuss litigation, John Majika arbitration in accordance with 4246-5A2 and appoint Mark A. McSally, Town Solicitor, as Clerk Pro Tem. Somebody can make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor, Ms. Agopian?
Aye.
Mr. Mannix?
Aye.
Ms. Bonanno?
Aye.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Aye.
Mr. Callahan, aye. Have a good night, everyone.